Welcome to a special podcast series from SalesProcess360. This is episode 3. I'm your guest host, Lindsay Young, president of Aspens Media. I am looking forward to spending time with Brian Gardner, founder of SalesProcess360 and author of the book ROI from CRM. Today, we're going to dig more into our special topic, the CEO for CRM. How's it going today, Brian? It's great. It's great. So let's just jump right in. Today, we're talking about a really important part of the CRM journey, vendor selection. So last time we talked, we addressed the statement of work, which ideally comes out of a thorough audit of sales processes. So to reiterate, your philosophy is to use the one-hand rule and to approach a CRM project in phases. Could you define those for everyone to just kind of set the stage for our conversation today?
Sure. So the one-hand rule. So you're talking about coming out of the audit with all these gaps that then we need to review and analyze and do a matrix to determine where we want to focus. It can be overwhelming. I mean, typically we can come up with 80 to 100. I've had over 100 sometimes gaps that have come out of this audit. So it's like, where do you start? So you've got to run it through. We run it through this matrix model, determining low, medium, and high, and coming down with this. At the end of the day, we need to boil it down to what I call the one-hand rule. Less than five or less areas that you want to focus on first by role within a CRM. Why? Because you don't want to overwhelm your team, and you want to make sure you're focused on the areas that can bring the most value. And so again, I came up with this one-hand rule. You have 5 fingers on one hand, and let's do the one-hand rule, kind of like the old days of the take your 1 vitamin a day, or what was that, So it's the one-hand rule. So again, the big thing there is you just don't want to overwhelm, and you want to make sure that you are focused on the areas per phase that can drive the value. And then once you feel like you've accomplished that phase, then guess what? You go to the next phase. So you look at the next areas of gaps that you feel. Again, the one-hand rule again for phase 2. And you continue. Again, I know we've said it many times. CRM should be looked at as a marathon and a journey, not a sprint. And so it's going to take time as you build it out.
So how does this connect to CRM vendor selection?
Well, so when you create the one-hand rule and you create the areas that you want to focus on first, that ultimately serves up the scope of work in the form of a day in the life scripts, and so that whole process is what you're going to use during the vendor selection process. There's a lot of moving parts to that, but that's basically it. It's you want to take those gaps, take the areas you're going to focus on first with the one-hand rule, which then drives the day in the life scripts in the day in the life scenarios, use cases, whatever you want to say there, that ultimately you want to serve up to the vendor during the evaluation process.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the day in the life script that you just mentioned. How does the CEO for CRM and their team put those together? Can you provide a little bit more detail of what those are and what they look like?
First off, these day in the life scripts ultimately will be used throughout the whole process, the whole CRM process. So let's reiterate starting from the beginning, right? So we come up with these gaps by role. Remember, by role, we have these gaps and efficiencies. We then boil those down to the 3 to 5, the one-hand rule of what we want to focus on. Out of those, the ones that we choose as the ones we want to focus on, we then create the day in the life scripts within CRM to address those on how a team or how that sales team, outside sales team or inside sales team or product specialists need to use CRM. And that is driven from the gaps that were identified. We come up with these scripts of what we want the sales teams, inside, outside sales team to do in CRM. And that starts everything in motion.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the day in the life script that you just mentioned. Can you define that further and then maybe give a few examples of how that's put together?
Sure. So when we do the audit, we come up with these gaps by role. Those gaps then we basically put detailed on those gaps that are ultimately scripts and workflows. You can think of them as workflows. Of what a user or what a role, inside sales, outside sales, product specialist, marketing, need to do in CRM for that areas of expectation, because that one hand rule of the gaps ultimately drives your expectations for the use of CRM for your for the sales team. And so what we need to do is create scripts of how they're going to use, and script / workflows, or how they're going to use CRM, and what are the key components of that. Example, I'll start with about as simple as you can get. The use case, a script or a use case or a workflow of how to add a contact in CRM. And what are the key fields that we want to capture for that contact? Their industry, their product of interest, their role, their title. So we build all of these scripts and workflows around the entry and management of CRM for everything. Another popular one, or one that's always typically phase one, is opportunity management. Managing an opportunity. How do we manage that opportunity in a script, in a workflow? How do you add multiple companies to it? How do you add multiple products to it? How do you get the go and the get percentage? How do you involve competition and then work the competition on opportunities? These are all things that have to be worked out and scripted. And again, we will use these day in the life scripts through the whole journey of CRM. So out of the gap comes these scripts by role of areas we want to focus on with CRM, but we're going to use them also. We're going to use them for building out the build. When we select the CRM vendor, we're going to use these scripts to use to build the CRM. We're going to use these scripts to create the testing processes and the testing documentation to make sure that the system works per the scripts and the workflows. We're going to use them for training, to build out the training content. So these scripts are so important, and again, touch pretty much the entire CRM journey. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for walking us through that, Ryan. So it sounds like you share these documents with potential vendors.
Absolutely. And again, I will tell you, and again, I've been involved with quite a few CRM implementations, both initial implementations or redos, as I call them. I think actually the vendors are they're like, oh, okay, good, you've got that. But then after they think about it, I think they also say, they're driving the process now. Because that's what these scripts do. When we serve up the scripts to the vendors, we say that this is what we want the demo to cover. That's they're not used to that in most cases. What they're used to, coming in and giving a demo and showing us how great their CRM is and how the technology is, and they're throwing all this, they're just trying to wow us, right? Where this keeps it very structured, keeps it between the lanes, and becomes very clear on the power of that CRM and of how it can be used within our company. So yeah, it's absolutely we give it to them, and we require them to use those day in the life scripts to present their CRM in a demo.
Brian, how many vendors should you include in an evaluation?
I guess I don't want to, less than the one hand rule. Let's, stick in the one hand rule. We talked about it. Less than the one hand rule. I typically say 3, no more than 4. I have done one, I think was 5. It just 3 to 4. And okay, why 3 to 4, whatever. I think, boil it down. And it's also a management. I mean, when you commit to the vendors you commit to, it's a project to manage all those vendors and all the demos and just the time. And there's a lot involved in that. So typically 3 to 4.
Do companies tend to overshoot typically on the number of vendors they include in the vendor selection process?
They talk about it, or they create a list and they say, well, this company's using this vendor, and it might creep up. But I mean, if I'm involved, I recommend highly that let's get it down to 3 or 4, because it's going to be time, and every vendor you add, it adds time to the process. It's project management with that vendor.
So how do you know who to include? Do you have kind of a rule of thumb for what companies should consider?
I think you first need to do a self-assessment of, as a company, where are you and what's your budget and restraint. Not all CRMs are built alike, and as well as not all CRMs are the cost to implement are not alike. So You need to truly understand your company's needs. Again, coming from the audit, right? You've got that now, and do a honest assessment of who should we really put on the list that we can afford, that can work with us, and at the end of the day, we're not trying to overstep or take too big of a bite here. Um, then another thing is references. I mean, you can't beat references in your industry, so talk to your friends, family and friends, and get a feel for who they're using. But try to come up with boil that list down to 3 or 4. I mean, sometimes it's hard, but you can get there.
So, one, I presume there's a lot of emotion or preconceived notions that come into the evaluation of vendors. So, how can you ensure your team? How can a CEO for CRM ensure that their team remains objective in their evaluation of vendors?
Great question, because what I've found is, and again, I think it's with everything, not just CRM within companies. Okay, so let's back up. The CEO for CRM has assembled the evaluation team that's going to be involved with evaluating CRMs. We've got the team made up of different roles, different tenures within the company. It's a good mix of evaluation team, but inevitably, there's always one, for sure, maybe two people on that team that are pretty dominant. And they've got a voice that they want everyone to hear, and they can maybe sway, just based on their tenure or their dominance within the company, that they need to go with one CRM. Or that this is the CRM that we need to go with without even going through the evaluation process. And that's why I've come up with an evaluation scorecard process, which eliminates that feels like. It eliminates the dominance of one or two people kind of driving the evaluation without going through a full evaluation and letting everyone on the team truly have a voice. I literally just came out of an evaluation process. We narrowed it down to 3. They were going to be 4, but we got it down to 3. And before we even started, for the most part, a lot of the team, based on a dominant person on the team, was carrying the one CRM vendor's flag, that they were going to be of choice. We went through the evaluation process, where, and again, I want to also talk about, it's not just evaluating the vendor, it's evaluating the partner, and it's evaluating the solution for your needs. But I'll talk about that in a second. Long story short, of the summary of that, and then we'll get back to that, is when we went through the whole evaluation process and truly scored it and removed the feels like and came up with a very logical way to evaluate these and score and had everyone's voice, the preferred number 1 vendor of choice that was thought to be before this became number 3. They were the 3rd in the selection process. Again, because we went through the process and everyone felt like they were, and it was a process to go through the evaluation. It wasn't just feels like. But back to the evaluation, back to the scorecard. That scorecard, the components of that scorecard need to consider 3 things. They need to consider the CRM vendor, so there's questions about the CRM vendor as a software provider. Okay. Then there's questions about the software and how does it stack up against our needs. Remember the scripts that we talked about? Well, guess what? We're going to evaluate the CRM based on how well it matches up to our needs, based on our scripts and our needs, okay, day in life scripts, such that we score against that. Is a lot of it out of the box, or do we have to do a lot of customization to meet our needs? Okay. And then probably, I think, the biggest thing to evaluate, which I think a lot of companies maybe don't think about, and that is evaluating the partner. The CRM partner that you're ultimately going to be working with after you choose the CRM vendor. Because most CRM companies, if not almost all of them, you don't deal directly with the CRM vendor, you deal with the partner. Their VAR, value-added reseller, their partner channel, it's an independent company, third-party company that is certified to implement that CRM. And they're not exclusive. That's another nice thing. They're not exclusive. And so, you can go find a partner. And a lot of the companies that I'm doing CRM 2.0 plus on, the redo, it's not the issue with the CRM. It was the issue with the partner. They either didn't understand their business, they didn't have the technical resources or bandwidth that they maybe set on the front end once they really dove into this. They didn't have internal implementation processes that facilitated successful CRM implementation. So the partner is so key, and you must have them on your evaluation scorecard.
Speaking of, we spoke in the last episode about redos versus brand new implementations. So how often, and I'm springing this question on you, but how often does a redo result in a new CRM vendor versus staying with the same one and just resetting?
Um, I'd say, 50-50. I mean, the ones that I've with 50-50.
Okay.
So it really depends on and maybe that's a political answer. It's okay, 50-50 is flip a coin, but it's 60-40, 50-50. It's not swayed one way or the other. The issue there, and again, I'm working with right now. They switched vendors, and they were that's another thing. You can only have one first impression. So even though it was the partner's fault that I think when I really looked at it and really analyzed or got in and did this audit and looked at what was going on, and knowing that the CRM could have handled that, or again, they might call it red, you call it blue. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same. You get to the same results. CRMs today are so they're more advanced than they were so many years ago. Any CRM could, for the most part, can work. Again, the partner. But where I was going with this is they switched vendors because the users were tarnished and the users had a bad taste in their mouth, and we could say whatever we want, but it's like no, So the company made a decision. We're going with a different vendor. It's a new day.
Fresh start.
Yep, fresh start.
That
Because
makes
of the impression that the users had on CRM, and they equated CRM to that vendor. But at the end of the day, it was really the partner that I felt really didn't do the job they needed to do.
So I wanted to add another question for you, Brian. You just mentioned that at the end of the day, a lot of the solutions can work for most companies as long as they're configured, and we'll talk about the specifics in a future episode. However, would you say then that, maybe a lot of companies said we must have some of the really big, more complicated systems. They have to be part of the process. There's now a lot more options on the more affordable side of things. On the lower end, so to speak, and that there's a big spectrum of expensive to cheaper. There's more options at this end.
Easy entry, and then you've got the
Yes.
the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room, the SAPs of the world, right?
Yes. Right. That's what I mean. Yeah, but you don't have to go with that. There's a lot more options now on that other end, right?
Do a Google search for CRM vendors and see how much you come back with. I mean, when I got into this business, the CRM world, before CRM was even called CRM, right? 25 years ago, it was SFA, Salesforce Automation. There were handfuls. You had the gold mines of the world and the maximizers of the world. I mean, I'm dating myself here, the apps. Okay. Do a Google search on CRM vendors today. And then what there has been a trend in, it's been a trend for a while, and that is industry focused CRMs, which I'm a believer in. I am a believer in that. You got your, as we said there, your 10,000-pound gorilla in the room of SAP, but you've got a lot of industry focused CRMs that, again, I am a very big believer in those because they're hopefully more out of the box, less customization. You can get up and running quicker, more cost effective. I mean, there's a lot of advantages. But it's a big world out there. CRM's a big world out there. And again, I go back to, it's not about the CRM. In most cases, most companies are only using a fraction of the capabilities of a CRM system, especially for phase one. Now, again, you've got to make sure that obviously as your needs grow, the CRM can accommodate your needs past phase one. But there's so many CRMs out there. It comes back down to that partner. That partner is so key to the successful implementation.
So let's talk a little bit, and you'll probably repeat some of what we've talked about, which I think is worth doing. What are some of the most common mistakes that teams make in this CRM selection and evaluation process when it comes to
without
vendor?
fail, they do not take the offensive approach, so to speak, to this. They're not on the offensive with driving what the CRM vendors and the partners they selected of what they want to see and how they want the demos to go. They say, we want a CRM system. Okay, well, that's what does that mean, right? And so if you leave it up to the CRM vendors and their partners to come in, now the good ones will do a needs analysis before they'll try to understand your business. But there's nothing that beats that script. We go back to those scripts. There's nothing to beat the scripts that you position to the CRM vendor to say, okay, per the demo, per the evaluation, we're using this as our guiding light. This is our roadmap. This is what we're going to be making our decisions on what we can do, what you can do, and how you can accommodate our needs. And so I think the biggest mistake companies make is they let the CRM vendor take the lead instead of them taking the lead. So with that being said, I have a recent story that was kind of interesting. I was working with a client. As we speak right now, we've made the decision on a CRM. We're started down the journey of implementation. But during the evaluation process, we did everything we just talked about. This is the one that the number one vendor they thought on the front end became the number three vendor at the evaluation, okay, at their scorecards. So when we did that, I suggested highly that we do not go out to the vendors. We go and we investigate partners for those vendors. Totally different. I was like, we are not going to call ABC CRM company to let them know we're interested in CRM. We're going to go find the partners for which we did our due diligence, and we found partners that we wanted to reach out to and say, hey, we've got a CRM project and we're looking at this vendor. We know that you're a partner. Tell us about you as a partner. Let's get comfortable with you as a partner, because back to partners are so key to success, right? So we started with that in mind. Long story short, we ultimately had to get the CRM vendor in the process. After we've been through the demos and everything else, we're getting down to selection. We needed to get the CRM vendor because we needed pricing and all, which came from the CRM vendor. Do you know that one of the CRM vendors, I'm not going to mention any names, one of the CRM vendors got offended a little bit and got aggravated a little bit that we didn't go to them first, that we went to the partner, because they said and so they wanted to almost reinvent everything that we've done. And we're like, no, we've been down that road, and this is what we haven't made a selection yet, but we now need your pricing, and we're working with the partner. And they just wanted to sell, and sell us off how great they were and how shiny their new CRM object was and all the wow factors. But we totally reversed the role, where we went to the partner, and then we didn't get the CRM vendor involved until after we narrowed down our choice. And we brought them involved because we needed the contract will be with the CRM vendor and the pricing and all that, but we had already been down the evaluation process. And they were not too, they weren't, because we upset their apple cart. We moved their cheese.
And that's the value that a consultant like you brings to the table, right? And one of those value points is you've been through this process many, many times. And so you recognize that approach is going to be far more effective for the business that's searching for a CRM than starting with the CRM vendor.
I believe so. I mean, that's, I feel that's our secret sauce, so to speak, or that's the approach that we take, right or wrong. And people can agree or disagree. That's just what we've decided to do. And it's worked very well for us so far. But, the key thing there is, the key takeaway there is, as a company looking for CRM, you need to be in control of the process. Don't let the CRM vendor be in control of the process.
And one additional question from that, Brian, we haven't talked about it yet, is when you're saying partner, you're talking about someone that can actually help you implement the solution from a technical standpoint. And hopefully they're also consultative, but then the role you're playing is not that. And so those are two different roles.
That's a great question, and something I bring up very early in the process with the partner to make sure they're comfortable with me and the role that I'm playing with the client as the CRM consultant or advisor or coach, so to speak, and guiding them through this journey. Because a lot of times the partner takes on that role or has a department to take on that role. So that's something we talk about very early in the process. I mean, good point. And again, at the end of the day, I believe, again, through my eyes, that 1 + 1 can equal 4, because they're good at what they do and they know their system. I'm going to help us hopefully get across the finish line quicker, because I'm going to guide them through what the needs are and serve up a lot of the content and information and specifications that they need, where we don't have to spend a lot of time in discovery for them, because they have to understand what we need to do. And again, back to those scripts. Those scripts help drive all of that, down to every object with what fields are needed. And is it a single selection or a multi-selection? Do I need to link this object to this object? There's all these technical things that we have ready to serve up to that partner, which can, again, facilitate a more efficient and effective and hopefully below budget implementation.
So we've kind of mentioned the CEO for CRM a little bit throughout this conversation, but could you clarify their role where they are leading in this vendor selection and evaluation process?
Yeah. First off, they've got to assemble the team. That's their first thing we talked about, assemble a team. They've got to be the cheerleader. They've got to constantly promote why we're doing this, because this is different. I mean, everyone that's on this team has a full-time job besides being on the CRM evaluation team. So it's rallying the troops, it's getting them motivated, convincing them that their time is spent, and also making sure, again, back to that evaluation scorecard, that there's not one or two people that are driving the decision, that they truly are part of the decision and their voice is heard. Okay. Then it's making sure that we stick to our guns with our phased approach and that we don't try to do too much. And, that at the end of the day, that we pick the right solution for our company today, but more importantly for the future, that the CRM vendor and the partner we chose is going to be a partner with us for long term as we grow in CRM and go to phase 2 and phase 3. So that CO for CRM is wearing a lot of different hats. They're the cheerleader, they're the motivator. They're making sure that things stay on track and that as a company, we're staying focused to what we need to be doing here. Promoting the why. Oh my gosh, they constantly need to be promoting the why. So they're wearing many, many hats. Now, another question you might be asking, do they need to be involved with every meeting and every decision? No, but they need to have their finger on the pulse and they need to assemble the team with key stakeholders that can carry the flag and understand the needs of the company. But they do need to have their finger on the pulse, for sure, throughout the whole process.
Are there any challenges aside from some of those that you just mentioned that they should be aware of or anticipate throughout this process?
Yeah, challenges would be, again, keeping the team focused, because again, everyone's rah-rah in the beginning. And again, this doesn't happen in a day or a week or a month. It could be a couple months based on people's schedules. But you asked the question earlier about how many vendors should you look at. You start adding more vendors, that's just more time. That's another darn meeting. That's another demo. That's all this stuff. So, the challenge as a CEO for CRM is going to have is keeping the team motivated, because it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? We said that many, many times. And so in the beginning, everyone on the team, you have your first kickoff CRM meeting. You're now part of the evaluation team. You feel special. You're getting free lunch now, right? You're having these meetings during lunch. You're getting free lunch, and then guess what? Week 1's over, month 1's over. Now I'm into month 2 or 3 during the evaluation process, and my gosh, I got stacks of to-dos and emails sitting on my desk and in my laptop. It's keeping everyone motivated through this process and keeping their eye on the ball.
Is there an average length of time from start to finish for just the vendor selection side of things that people should aim for?
Again, depends on the scope, depends on your phase 1 expectations, it depends on your bandwidth, there's just a lot of variables. If I had to give you a number, I would say, hopefully we can finish the evaluation, a thorough evaluation with the evaluation scorecards and all of that stuff that we need to go through in about 3 months.
Okay. So people often think it would be shorter or longer.
But 3 months is that's something we try to shoot for. You got holidays, and you got, working right now, we're doing this implementation. And now guess what time it is? It's a summertime. So you got people on vacation, you got key stakeholders, and then all of a sudden it's Christmas time. And, you just got to deal through all that. It's the 3 months.
Right. Okay. All right. I think we've covered all of the key points of vendor selection. So thank you, Brian, for sharing your expertise. We're going to cover more of the details about post-implementation, getting buy-in, change management, all of the things in the next episode, because it doesn't just stop with choosing a vendor. So,
and I say this all the time, the real work begins after you choose the vendor. Mm-hmm. That's when the real work begins. Anyway, I look forward to those future talks.
I did too. Thank you, Brian.